So let's start all over again. Paul goes on. He'd been talking about how we're able ministers of the new covenant, and I was explaining how it is different than the old covenant in that God made the old covenant with them and made the promises and then let them see if they could keep it. And God began giving them the reward right off the bat, but they didn't do their part. Now, the New Testament will not be like that, the New Covenant. The New Covenant, we are conditioned now, and the gospel is the proclaiming of the terms and conditions of the New Covenant, and judgment is on us now to judge whether or not we can make that covenant with Him. Now, God made the old covenant at Mount Sinai with Israel. He laid it before them. They said, all that the Lord had said we will do and be obedient. Okay, the Lord said, I take you at your word. So we make the covenant, and it was ratified by blood of animals shed, because Christ hadn't shed His blood yet, so they took the blood of animals. And that covenant was made. God isn't making the new covenant like that. The new covenant has not been yet made. God started laying down the new covenant before us, not by Moses at Mount Sinai, but by Christ at Jerusalem. And Christ trained His apostles, and they went out proclaiming the new covenant. And it's been going on till now, and today I'm proclaiming that new covenant. And people are still proving whether or not they're going to make that covenant with God. You can't just say, okay, I will be obedient, so let's make the covenant. God says, no, I won't make a covenant. A covenant is a contract, and once that's made, God has to keep His part of it. Well, God was willing to keep His part of it, but Israel did not keep their part of it. And God this time says, I won't make that covenant with the church. The church has got to prove they have kept their part of it. You've got to have kept your part of it in this life. And if you have kept your part of the new covenant in this life, then you can make that covenant with Christ. And what will that covenant be? It will be the marriage covenant. The old covenant at the time of Moses was a marriage to Christ. But it was a marriage of carnal, human, flesh and blood people with the great Christ, who was called Yahweh at that time, or Yahweh, whichever way you want to. A lot of them pronounce the W there as a V anyway, and sometimes they spell it that way. But in the new covenant, the gospel is preaching the gospel to people, the terms and conditions. Now, judgment is on us now, and we're being tried and tested and judged as to whether we qualify to make that covenant with God. I have not made that covenant with Christ yet. You have not made that covenant yet with Christ. You're still on trial. You're still being tried and tested day by day as to whether you will qualify to have overcome Satan, to have overcome yourself, to have overcome this world by coming out of this world, and whether you have kept God's word, and whether you have lived God's way. That's why I say a while ago, after the Feast of Tabernacles, I think if God allows us 3 days before the feast to get there, or for some people who can get there in half a day, they go all the other 2.5 days for fun or vacation or whatever, and nobody's going to have to take over 3 days to get there. And then they've got all 8 days there just for that feast and the wonderful time. And then 3 days to get home. They not only want that, they want to take a lot more. They want to take an extra 3 days going, and they want to leave on the 10th day of the month, when the feast doesn't begin until the 15th, and that's 5 days. So they take an extra 5 days going, and they always want to take anywhere from 7 days to 10 days again coming home. And then in addition to that, that isn't enough. Oh no, you never get enough. They want their 2-week vacation with full pay beside. If they work for the church and the church pays them, they want full pay for another 2 weeks beside. I say to you people like that and all like that, I question whether you're going to ever make it and make the new covenant with Christ. I question. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you're right. Maybe you should take a little more time off. Maybe you should be a little more selfish. Maybe Christ is an easy mark, and He's so loving and so kind that you mistake His kindness, and maybe He just let you get away with everything you want. And He'll still make the covenant with you. Well, I love you, so come on. But don't mistake God's love. That wouldn't be love. God's love, it doesn't mean He loves us enough that He wants us to do what is wrong. He doesn't love your wrongdoing. He hates that. He doesn't hate you when you do it, but He hates your doing it. I tell you, I think we need to think of these things. We're all now on trial as to whether we're going to make the new covenant or not, and the gospel and all of the preaching week by week, Sabbath by Sabbath of the churches, all of the writings that I'm sending out, all of the Bible studies that we have, are all helping our people to make the grade to see if you're qualified to ever make that new covenant with Christ. Are you going to go into the marriage? It's just like a man who's proposed to a woman. He says, I would like to marry you, and he's a pretty wealthy man. But he's very busy, and he's trying to do the right thing. He's a very fine man. He's a man of very high character. And he proposes to the woman. But if he finds that she is not living as she ought to in the meantime during the betrothed period and prior to the marriage, maybe he will never marry her at all. I know long before I ever thought of, maybe I had thought about getting married. I guess a young man always does by 20 years old or a little more. And I wasn't married till I was 25. But I was careful about the girls that I went with. And I can remember one girl in particular. I know that I called it a system. I said that if I dated a girl, I would not even date a girl unless I thought she was a very fine girl and really one of the unusual ones and a sort of a leader. Otherwise, I just wouldn't date her. But if I did, that first date was a test date. The first date was a test date, and I was checking up on her. And if it went all right, I would ask her for one more date. But it was still a test. And I remember one girl in particular. And, I thought she was a rather nice girl on the first date. And at the second date, I went to her home to meet her parents. And there I found out that she was a lazy girl. I found out that she didn't help her mother. She would never help wash the dishes. She never helped make the beds. She didn't do any of the work at home at all. And I found things about her that didn't measure up. That was the last date. I never have seen that girl or heard of her since. She got a second date. But a girl never got a second date if she didn't measure up. Now, Some girls got a third and fourth date. And I might have even continued it longer, but I wasn't in love with them, and I never got around to thinking about marriage. It was just a companionship. And I enjoyed their company, and it was a nice evening, and so on. But a girl was on trial. Well, I tell you, we are the prospective bride, and Christ is this wealthy man, wealthy young man. And he's looking at us, he's thinking maybe he'd like to marry us.